Have you ever wondered how many tornadoes occur each year in the US? Approximately 1,200 tornadoes, which is about 800 more than any other country on Earth combined. For decades, the region most associated with these violent storms have been the Great Plains, an area stretching from Texas through Kansas, Nebraska, and even the two Dakotas. This area earned the name Tornado Alley for good reason. It was once the main breeding ground of the country's most frequent and destructive storms. In recent decades, researchers have identified a geographic shift. The storms that once defined the Great Plains have been occurring farther east, striking southeastern states such as Kentucky, Mississippi, and Louisiana more and more often. This eastward movement of tornado activity is causing many problems due to the unpreparedness of these locations, which used to not need much preparation at all. But the question is, why is this shift occurring? Tornadoes form under a specific combination of conditions: warm, moist air from the southern regions like Gulf of Mexico, cold, dry air from northern regions like Canada, and strong wind shears that cause thunderstorms to rotate. When these three conditions collide, supercell thunderstorms develop, thus increasing the likelihood of tornadoes. Recent climate studies suggest that the geographic overlap of these conditions is no longer centered over the Great Plains. A 2018 study published in the journal Science found that the center of tornado activity has migrated eastward over the recent decades. Their research, using decades of observational data, identified a growing concentration of individual tornadoes and tornado outbreaks across the lower Mississippi Valley and parts of the Midwest. The explanation for this occurrence is shown in the shifting atmospheric patterns. As the plains experience more frequent droughts and higher surface temperatures, moisture from the Gulf of Mexico is beginning to travel farther east before colliding with the cooler, drier air needed to create the instability. At the same time, subtle variations in the jet stream's path due to climate change are influencing where the strongest wind shears occur, occurring more frequently in the southeast than the central plains. Research within the journals NPJ Climate and Atmospheric Science and Geophysical Research Letters supports this observation, showing an increasing number of days with tornado-favorable conditions east of the Mississippi River. This new trend of climate does not necessarily mean more tornadoes overall, but a redistribution of where they are more likely to occur, meaning the center of Tornado Alley has shifted towards the southeast. Consequences of this shift extend past meteorology and climate. The Southeast's unique geography increases the potential for destruction, and population density in these areas does not help. Unlike the wide-open landscapes of the Great Plains, the Southeast is characterized geographically by forests, hills, and suburban development, which can hide the approaching storms that can hinder visual confirmation, costing valuable time. Moreover, many southeastern communities feature high concentrations of mobile homes and older housing, often without basements or storm shelters. Studies published in the journal Weather, Climate, and Society have shown the socioeconomic vulnerability, which includes factors such as poverty, housing quality, and access to warnings, which plays a major role in tornado survival rate. The toll of tornadoes in the Southeast has been tragically shown in recent years. Disaster response organizations such as Team Rubicon USA report that nighttime tornadoes and high-density urban impacts have contributed to particularly high fatality rates. The 2011 outbreak that devastated Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Joplin, Missouri remains a stark reminder of the destruction of intense tornadoes striking populated regions in these unprepared areas for such events. In addition, research has found that tornado activity is becoming increasingly fewer but more severe outbreak days. This means that while the number of annual tornadoes may not always rise dramatically, the concentration of multiple tornadoes within single events increases the chances of major destruction and devastation. Beyond physical damage, the psychological and social impacts of tornadoes are profound. Studies in PLOS One articles show how survivors often experience long-term anxiety, disrupted community ties, and economic strain. Tornadoes do not simply destroy and disrupt physical infrastructure, they alter the emotional and social foundations of entire regions, and even produce trauma for those who unfortunately experience such events. As the center of these storms move east, it encounters populations that are known to have fewer resources dedicated to tornado awareness, shelter construction, recovery infrastructure, and readiness. This results in a widening gap between the areas equipped to endure and expect continuous severe weather and the areas that are newly exposed to it and are severely unprepared. Communities across the shifting Tornado Alley have been adapting and evolving with both innovation and resilience. Advances in meteorological technology have dramatically improved early warning systems. Enhanced radar networks and high-resolution modeling allow forecasters to issue warnings with greater accuracy and longer lead times, the time between a tornado warning and strike. However, technological advancements cannot fix everything. Research has shown that warnings must be accessible, trusted, and actionable for them to save lives. Sociological studies indicate that the effectiveness of warnings depends on factors such as local communication networks, community trust, and cultural attitude toward risk. Local governments and emergency agencies are also taking steps to harden infrastructure. Some regions have implemented stricter building codes requiring wind-resistant construction materials and designated safe rooms in public buildings. Programming in parts of Alabama and Mississippi now encourages the construction of community shelters capable of protecting large groups during severe weather to better help defend against the shifting tornadoes. At the same time, volunteer organizations and nonprofits are filling critical gaps in post-disaster recovery. Team Rubicon USA, American Red Cross, and similar groups coordinate relief efforts, rebuild homes, and train local responders to operate effectively and efficiently in the wake of these storms. These collaborations and group efforts illustrate the growing importance of community adaptation in facing the ever-changing severe weather. Social resilience is another emerging area of focus. Studies of post-tornado recovery reveal that communities that are more familiar with one another or with strong social bonds, like neighbors who know how to support one another, tend to recover more effectively and efficiently compared to communities with weaker bonds. This insight further highlights that resilience is not simply a matter of infrastructure, but of connection, trust, and cooperation that can help when it comes to destructive events. Unfortunately, challenges remain. In economically disadvantaged areas, poor recovery can continue vulnerability, like if a damaged home is replaced with similar structures rather than upgrading the housing. Without proper investments, adaptation, and efforts, there is a risk of continued problems and division between the areas or communities. Although no individual tornado can be a direct result of climate change, the more general trends in atmospheric dynamics show that environmental variability is changing the location of where tornado supportive conditions develop. The scientific consensus emphasizes that changes in land surface moisture, jet stream behavior, and storm clustering reflects a complex interaction between natural variability and man-made climate influences. This evolving understanding of the weather and its changes carries policy implications. As tornado frequenting regions shift, so must preparedness, education, and funding priorities. The traditional perception of Tornado Alley as an unmoving area, hence the name Alley, no longer reflects scientific evidence. Emergency management systems will need to adapt their resource allocations and recovery programs to meet the growing needs of southeastern states. Preparedness is also not just a meteorological issue, it is a social one. Ensuring access to storm shelters, early warning technologies, and post-disaster aid requires coordinated action between scientists, policymakers, government officials, and communities. Resilience depends as much on governance and social infrastructure as it does on forecasts and engineering. The eastward shift of Tornado Alley represents a fundamental change in the geography of American severe weather. What was once viewed as a hazard of the Great Plains has become a growing and evolving threat across the densely populated Southeast. The scientific evidence is clear. The center of instability, moisture, and wind shear is moving eastward, bringing tornado activity with it towards new regions with distinctive vulnerabilities. This evolving problem demands a comprehensive response that integrates atmospheric science, public policy, urban planning, and social equity. Continued investment in research is vital to refine models to help predict and understand the mechanisms driving these patterns. Something equally essential is the development of community-based adaptation that prioritizes both physical safety and continuous resilience. The challenge ahead is not merely to predict where the next tornado will strike, but to ensure that every community, whether in the Great Plains or the Southeast, is equipped to face it. The storms may be moving east, but the responsibility to prepare, protect, and adapt extends nationwide.